My baby turned 1 very recently, and I have friends who are also potentially in that stage of life soon. So I thought it would be nice to share some of my biggest tips that I wish someone had told me before I had a baby to celebrate. So, tip number 1, and this is honestly the biggest thing, and you don't think about it, but start prepping your arms now. I just assumed that I would have a small baby because I was a small baby, and that I would be able to rock her and my arms would grow in strength with my baby over time. But you really have no idea how big your baby is going to be when they come out. And my baby grew so quickly. And immediately postpartum, you do not have a core. And I was so thrown off and found it difficult to rock her from the beginning, and it's only gotten harder. And I laugh at myself now thinking about me struggling to rock my 8-pound baby when now I'm struggling sometimes to rock my 20-pound baby. So things you just don't think about. And I've been an athlete almost my whole life, so I really was not prepared in general for how thrown off I would be not having a strong core. I just didn't know my body immediately postpartum, which was so off putting and made everything so much harder. So please just prepare and try and strengthen your arms and body as a whole in general, if you can, prior to giving birth. But just, in general. And I'm not a doctor, and you should definitely confirm all exercise with them first. But if you are pregnant, it's not too late to start working out your arms. You don't have to lift weights to do arm workouts. There are a lot of lower impact arm workouts you can do using the weight of your own arms and gravity to start trying to prepare. And I can link an example below. Also, actively choose to take the time to lift up your baby properly with your knees and not your back, or your legs, not your back. I know it can be a hassle, but you really do want to save your back. I have family members who still suffer from chronic back pain because they were not lifting their children properly when they were younger. Um, and it's been like 35 years or so. Um, so, like I said, chronic back pain is the last thing that you want, and it's a very real possibility if you don't take care of your body in the day to day. And you just want to start day one, even when they're super small. Tip number 2 is within that same vein, but don't be afraid to prioritize comfort in postpartum. So much of your pregnancy is discomfort that I think a lot of us just enter motherhood expecting to remain in discomfort. And there is still definitely a lot of that. But you can absolutely take moments of comfort within all of this. And what I mean by this, for example, is that you don't have to be physically in an uncomfortable position to breastfeed or put your baby to sleep, things like that. And the reason for this is if you're uncomfortable feeding your baby, you won't sustainably be able to continue breastfeeding long term. So, if that's a goal of yours to breastfeed and to breastfeed long term, then you really want to prioritize doing it in a comfortable way so that you can maintain doing that. And then with sleep, you're going to have to do that. They're not going to stop sleeping. Like, that's something that you have to do. And you're going to do that multiple times a day for a long time. So, you want to be able to put your baby down in a way that's still comfortable for you and, sustainable for you long term. Because if you're anything like me, sleep was one of the hardest aspects for me and still continues to be. And sometimes it's a long time putting your baby down. And so you just want to be able to make sure that you are comfortable when you're doing that to make sure that you are as least stressed out and as least frustrated as possible. And, in the regard to the sleeping, I really recommend just getting a rocking chair. I have not used a rocking chair during most of my time being a mother, and I really wish that I had just gotten one. I think it would have made a big difference. But I wanted to save money and space. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment for most of that first year, and I don't know why part of me just assumed that I had to rock my baby standing up. You definitely don't have to. You can use a rocking chair. And I know that sounds crazy, probably, that I have to say that, but I don't know. I just didn't think too much about rocking my baby prior to delivery. And then postpartum, I was too out of it to think about trying something different that was easier on my body. And I wish I had just gotten a nice rocking chair. And now my baby's used to being rocked in a certain way, and she finds a chair distracting. And yes, even like a little bit over a year in, I mean, she mostly can go down without rocking, but there are still times when she sometimes needs a little bit of rocking. And, your back, your neck, your arms, your whole body goes through so much, especially, like I said, when you don't have that core immediately postpartum. And, you just don't know, and you can't anticipate how your baby will sleep or struggle to sleep in different seasons. And I really do think that a rocking chair is worth it. And I will definitely be thinking very hard about getting one to use full term for any future pregnancies that I have, because I think that that will make a big difference. I'm trying to think if there are any other things that would go into this category as far as prioritizing comfort. And just off the top of my head, I can't think of any, but these are the types of things where you can, it's okay to prioritize your comfort. I know that we're so focused on the baby and meeting the baby's needs and all of that, and that's totally valid and a good and beautiful thing. But it really is okay to take those extra seconds to just care about yourself and have that self care of prioritizing that comfort for yourself so that ultimately you can be in the most sustainable, good place to take care of your baby. So you have permission, prioritize your comfort. Tip number 3 is to put more prep time in for after your birth than for your pregnancy and labor. And I know that when you're pregnant and when you're thinking about being pregnant, even, the biggest thing on your mind is the pregnancy and especially labor. And I totally get that. That's very understandable. And I was the same way. You are going to be worried about labor and how your pregnancy goes. And those are very important things, but you really do need to learn what to do after all of that too. And I spent probably 90% of my time researching pregnancy and labor because I was so concerned about labor. But then I literally wasn't able to use a single thing I prepared for my labor because of just how my labor went. So then I didn't get the labor that I wanted, and then I had the baby. And I didn't remember any of what I had read about caring for a newborn, and it was just so difficult to try and learn on the fly, and you just don't have to do it that way. I also thought that I would be more motivated to research things for postpartum and taking care of baby in the third trimester, and I found that I was not motivated at all in my third trimester. So don't bank on that. And like I said, I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't prepare for labor or pregnancy. Definitely, please, please do that. I highly recommend a podcast and a few books that I'll link below that help me if you're interested. But just know that labor is going to go how it goes, and then it'll be over. And then the vast majority of your time for 18 plus years is going to be figuring out how to take care of your child. And you can and will absolutely learn on the fly. There's no there's no way that you're going to avoid having to learn on the fly, but you can make your life a lot easier at the beginning if you prep for those first days and months. Some of the general most important things, in my opinion, to focus on learning for the postpartum time are baby cues, and that's facial expressions and their cries and their meanings. People have videos showing images and videos of children and their cries and what those mean. And you're definitely going to want to watch those and have those saved. And then you're going to want to look at sleep cycles. Definitely feeding the baby, especially if you want to breastfeed, is super important to look up. Know how to change a diaper. Swaddling, although the hospital can help teach you with some of that. But it doesn't hurt to practice that on a stuffed animal beforehand. Definitely know how to use each and every item that you have for your baby: harnesses, cribs, sound machines, etc. Make sure they're charged and have batteries in them before the baby comes home. Like, you just want to do a lot of these things to really, really prepare for your baby before they come. Tip number four goes hand in hand with tip number three, but it is: when preparing for what to do for your baby, for after the birth especially, just anticipate you won't remember 90% of the things that you prep for. So prepare to be able to reference things easily instead of trying hard to memorize. It's just like school. You're trying to fill your head with so much information, and you're just never going to be able to remember all of it, especially when you're experiencing postpartum brain fog, because she is a real and a wild thing to experience. So try and make a short resource sheet for handy things for quick reference, like links to a video on baby cries or a link to a good website for answering certain questions about windows or breastfeeding. Find creators that you really like, whose opinions you trust. Make a playlist of a couple videos of these creators that you find helpful. Things like that. You're never going to remember everything you read or watch, so you might as well prepare for that fact and set yourself up for being able to reference what you've read or watched. And try not to add too much to this. If you find yourself feeling the pull to, maybe make a general document that you had add everything to, and then a second smaller and more curated document. I stress this because you're probably going to struggle with going back and forth and synthesizing and grouping things together properly. And I don't want you to be like me and end up with a jumbled mess of an 115-page Google Doc that is literally unusable because you have so much just not organized in it. So save yourself the trouble and try to be as limited as possible. Tip number five is to start preparing as soon as possible for everything labor, pregnancy, and after. It's okay if you start late learning or doing things, but you're only going to have so much willpower and motivation when you're pregnant. Everyone experiences vastly different pregnancies, and you have no idea when you'll feel really sick or lack motivation or whatnot. And in general, when you're pregnant and feel motivated to do something for the baby, please do it, even if it feels too early. I waited too long for things, and then I had a lot in the third trimester that I had to do, which was so difficult because I didn't feel well and I wasn't motivated, and that was super stressful. I just left so much to the last minute. Do not be me, literally waiting till I was in labor to write my birth plan. You will deeply regret that. Finalize your birth plan, pack for the hospital, wash baby's clothes, get the nursery ready, all of those different things. Don't listen to people who say you shouldn't do something until such and such number of weeks. It doesn't matter if you pack or make your birth plan in trimester one or two instead of three. You can always modify anything later. And don't even necessarily plan on you acting the way that you normally do about getting ready for things. I normally love packing and look forward to it, so I didn't think that I would have any trouble packing in the third trimester, and I genuinely struggled to find the willpower to pack in the third trimester. Tip number six: anticipate that you will not be the one looking in your hospital bag most likely when you're there for labor, yet you will most likely be the one packing it. If you want to use any of it, make sure that you've labeled what's in it so that your support person can actually get you the items from it and you actually remember what's even in there, especially since you're definitely going to overpack. This is especially important if you pack super early into your pregnancy, but it's also still important if you pack at the very end. Also, be careful to keep track of things you pack. If you end up being like me and gradually packing over time, it was pretty easy to forget what I already had in there, and then things just got jumbled up and it was just a mess, and I had no idea what was in there. Try to group similar items together and make it as intuitive as possible for a random person who isn't you to find something in it. And don't be ashamed of overpacking too. You don't know what you're going to want and need. And I personally feel it's better to be prepared and to feel like you have everything, even if you don't end up wanting to use some of it. Then for any following pregnancy, you now know your baseline and you can adjust from there. Yes, I'm sure that you'll get some looks going into the hospital like, oh, she's such a first time mom. But I honestly would rather have everything that I need and feel comfortable knowing that than go in being like, man, I wish that I'd packed that. And I cannot stress this enough. Please have something physical on top of the stuff that's in the bag. I don't know, wherever it makes sense to you. Maybe it's in a pocket or something, but just have a physical sheet of things that are in that bag so that, like, you literally don't even have to say anything or much at all. You can just point them to the list and like have your support person know that that list is in there so that they can take out whatever you need when you need it. And I would even separate things into like for labor and for after labor so that those things aren't even like touching each other so that they can just look in completely separate areas. And I would even go over your bag with whoever the support person that's going to be there with you, just so that they fully know what's in the bag and know what's in there to help you so that they're on top of things as much as possible too. Tip number 7, practice labor. I know that that sounds so stupid, but it's the single thing that would have had the biggest change and positive impact on my labor. So, how do you practice labor? I literally want you to act out and also mentally go through all of the different specific stages of labor and role play them how you should be working with your body at that specific stage. You can read Hypnobirthing by Siobhan Miller, which I can link below. She has techniques you can use in labor for the different stages and for pushing, especially if you don't want to back push slash purple push. Also, you're going to want to role play slash think through how you will react to complications. And you're going to want to think about as many complications as you possibly can. And if you prepare just in case to need interventions, you'll be better equipped to handle them if they happen. You want to have already thought through how you feel about C-sections and other procedures beyond just wanting them or not wanting them. That same book goes into some of this, so does the podcast I've linked below. But please, please, please do this. And don't just mentally think through it, physically do it over and over and over again. It needs to become like a second skin to you. I know it sounds so weird, and I know that it will be weird and awkward and uncomfortable to physically do, especially since you really need to do it with your support person for it to be actually helpful. And please, please do it with whoever is going to be there for you in labor. Think critically too about who you want to be your support person in labor because it doesn't have to be the obvious person like your mom or your partner. If they aren't willing to get in there to practice labor with you beforehand and can't get over the awkwardness and the uncomfortableness of it in the isolation of your home, I hate to say it, but they're just probably not going to be a good person supporting you in labor. It doesn't mean they're not a good person who is supportive of you and loves you. It just likely means that they will find it difficult to do all of the actions that will help you through labor and delivery when they're being watched by 10 labor and delivery nurses, a doctor, your mom, and whoever else. And they're stressed from the intensity of real labor on top of it. And it's okay if your family or whoever is not able to do this for you. Not everyone has that personality, and that's totally okay. And I really recommend thinking about having a doula if this is your situation, even in general. If you feel really strongly about having your labor go a certain way, having a doula is a great way to try and make that happen. And I know that it can be expensive and it's not in everyone's budgets, but it doesn't hurt to see who is in your area to see if it's a possibility for you. Tip number 8, be mindful of the typical things that are recommended for snacks and food postpartum, especially on the mommy food blogger sites and even in the products at the grocery store. I say this with a lot of hesitation and honestly still not being fully sure how I feel about some of the typical recommendations. I also don't want to shame anyone or their content, but I do feel strongly about this, so I felt that I needed to include it. When I was looking about a year and a half ago for postpartum recipes, I saw a lot of bloggers sharing recipes that are basically cake adjacent, but with healthier alternatives to the sugar instead of processed sugar. And I allowed myself to kind of be gaslit into thinking that I could eat as much of that as I wanted because it was labeled as healthy and good for postpartum and labeled as a snack and not a dessert. And certainly, homemade dessert is usually going to be healthier than most store-bought options. However, it doesn't mean that eating that is necessarily healthy for you and good to be eating in bulk. I found that I didn't really crave much during pregnancy, but I did crave these cake type foods after making a couple loaves postpartum. But it was unrealistic for me to keep making them so newly postpartum, and I found myself reaching for a lot of easy store bought alternatives because of this. And a year out, I'm still struggling with the sugar addiction that I developed because of this. As for the grocery stores, so many companies are trying to sell you the magic ingredient or product that will fix all your milk supply problems. And unfortunately, the latest science just doesn't support this. Yes, your diet absolutely can help or hinder your milk supply, but there isn't just one magical product that's going to suddenly get your milk going. So be wary of the marketing behind a lot of these projects that is very intentionally targeting a desire some of you may have to breastfeed. Also, some of these bloggers will gaslight you into food prepping all these freezer foods that you don't even eat normally, so just be very aware of that. Yes, freezing meals can absolutely be helpful, especially if you don't have a bunch of people bringing you meals, which is sadly probably not super common nowadays, and was certainly not my experience. However, if you don't eat freezer foods normally, you're probably not going to want to eat it after, especially not after having to thaw it out, because a lot of foods just taste very different thawed, even some of the ones recommended for freezing by the food bloggers. I found that a lot of the meal recommendations tasted better thawed than the snack versions, and I threw away a whole huge tray of protein balls because I just did not like them thawed out. And next time, we'll probably just make a few meals to freeze, but then gather some foods that are simple to make fresh, like meatballs. But if the thought of freezing foods does sound helpful to you, and it absolutely could be, maybe try some of those foods now and see if you actually like them, and then try freezing and thawing the food to see if you still like it thawed before you make like a huge batch. And I don't want to make it seem like every blogger is gaslighting you, but I definitely saw a lot of odd culprits when I was searching for healthy foods for postpartum. And there is definitely an aspect of people wanting to eat healthier foods that look and taste like unhealthy foods. So a lot of people make recipes that cater to that. But just because something is more healthy than similar alternatives doesn't mean it's very healthy, if that makes sense. So just be very mindful and aware when you're interacting with a lot of this content. Tip number 9. This one maybe isn't relevant for everyone, but I still think it's important to hear. Don't let people gaslight you into being pitted against your spouse. I was not prepared for the amount of comments like, "Isn't it the worst that you did all that work for 9 months and then your baby comes out looking like your husband?" Or, "Your baby doesn't look a single thing like you. Aren't you annoyed about that?" Over and over and over again. It drove me crazy. And it made me feel like I should feel some type of way about that. But, like, no, I'm happy that my baby looks like my favorite person in the world. Why would I be upset about that? And I think it's so silly that people seem to obsess over the baby's looks in general. Like she's a blob. It's too early to really tell who she's going to look like. And the people saying it often never even know what one or either of you looked like at that age. And my baby is actually remarkably in between my husband and I, yet I still get that all the time, even a year out. And I know that people are just excited and are trying to connect with you in the easiest, most obvious way they can, which is just how your baby physically looks. And many of them probably don't mean to be pitting you against your spouse, but that doesn't mean that the words that they say that they learn from society aren't damaging. Pregnancy is already enough of a mind game, but postpartum is a whole other level. It can be so easy for things to come between you and your spouse, and there's going to be a level of space there that you haven't maybe previously ever experienced before. And you really have to be careful to not let other people's opinions plant seeds of resentment in you. You are likely going to be the least mentally aware and the least on your guard against other people's opinions than you've ever been in your life because so much of your energy is going towards your baby. So just be very aware of that so you can try and mitigate some of it and not let it creep up on you because it really is very easy to do that.
Tip number 10 is to scrapbook. I know that not everyone has a family that's super into scrapbooking. My mom definitely is, but I just found that scrapbooking through this first year of my baby's life has just been so nice, and it's just helped me be able to keep track of everything so easily in one place. And I'm just so grateful that I did that. But I know that, scrapbooking can be overwhelming. And so I really recommend getting a scrapbook that is a more of a like fill in the blank type of one, at least for this first stage. And then if you felt like it, you could go back with like pictures and do your own from scratch scrapbook. But just know that they do have like fill in the blank almost ad lib style or Mad Lib style, I think is the game, scrapbooks that you can use. And I asked for one on my registry, and you can just follow through with it in the different stages. And it was just so relieving because I had just enough mental energy to fill things out without having to try and, print out pictures and remember details somewhere. And it just has it all laid out for me, and then later I'll probably try and get together more photos and make a true photo album. But this year has just been such a blur, and I'm so glad I could write things down in a bite-sized, easy to plot area, like in one book. And maybe that's not such a challenge for you, or maybe you don't care about that, and that's totally okay. But the scrapbook my mom made for me as a baby is one of the things that I treasure most. And it was something I loved looking at as a child. And I really just wanted to be able to get that, something like that to my child too. And it was really freeing to not expect myself to fully hand scrapbook something right away or to be pressured to try and remember all the details a year or two from the events because I have the worst memory even before I had my baby. And it honestly really helped me process my labor because that was one of the first things that I wrote out in it, my labor experience and my labor story. And it just helped me get all the details correct because I found myself even days later having to reference it again to remember everything that happened. And so, I don't know, like, this is not like sponsored or anything like that. Like, I'm not trying to get money from you and telling you to scrapbook. I just found it super helpful. Um, and I think that, it can be a really treasured memory that you have if that's something that you wanted to do as well.
Tip number 11, talk to your spouse after your labor, after you've really had a chance to process it. Maybe that takes a month or 3 months or even a year. But talk about what you struggled through, what went wrong, what you wished had happened, what you loved about your labor, what you would want to do again. Talk through what your perspective was, what was going through your head. And then what's really important is to have them tell you their perspective. I remember defense of my birth very differently than my spouse, and it gave me a lot of peace talking with him. I had a labor that didn't go at all how I wanted it to. Literally, almost every part of it went opposite of how I envisioned, and I didn't remember my husband like fighting for me, but hearing his perspective of the day helped me realize how much he did fight for me and help me, and it gave me a lot of peace. In the stress and chaos and the huge change in your life postpartum, you're probably not going to be able to quickly process your labor and how you feel about it and the shift of now being a mother. And if you're like me, you'll probably need weeks or months of slow processing in the brief moments that you're able to really decide how you feel about it all. And don't let that time passed since your labor keep you from talking about it with them. Tip number 12 is to be prepared for how quickly things change. This was honestly one of the hardest things for me postpartum, and I still sometimes, even over a year out, struggle with that. But you just will feel so out of your element. You have no idea what you're doing. You're exhausted. You're hormonal. You have no time off anymore. You are literally needed 24 hours a day in some capacity, or you're on call waiting to be needed. And you finally feel like you get some control back. You figure out what your baby needs finally. You're grooving with a set schedule and with knowing exactly what they need. And literally the next day, it all changes again. They have a different need for their wake windows. Their teeth come in and they're dealing with teething pain. They're suddenly needing to eat different food, etc., etc. And now you're suddenly out of your element again and having to figure out everything all over again. And this happens over and over and over again. And it's really frustrating. And I personally consider myself to be a very, very flexible and adaptable person, but I was truly pushed to my breaking point in needing to be flexible and constantly adapting. And there's honestly nothing you can really do about it other than try to be as prepared for it all as possible, and you just never will be prepared enough. And that's okay. But you just need to keep reminding yourself that things change constantly, and sometimes that's a good thing. When you're dealing with really terrible teething or a crushing sleep regression, that's only going to be a small season. And it's not going to last forever, even if it feels like it will in the moment. So let the constant change be your ally, not just your enemy. Tip number 13 is be mindful what you do when your baby is napping most of the day at the beginning. Prior to my delivery, I definitely was on my phone, but I wasn't used to being on my phone much. But one thing I didn't think about was how much would change with my time when I had my baby. Yes, I was very, very busy breastfeeding and taking care of my baby, but I also all of a sudden had these windows of time when my baby was sleeping, and she was sleeping a lot at the beginning. And often she was contact napping, so she was on me and I was nap trapped and couldn't move much. I also was recovering from a really, really bad tear that took months to properly heal. So I had to be very careful and was told I couldn't exercise or move certain ways for weeks. All of this accumulated in me being on my phone a lot longer than I normally was. And I grew very addicted to constantly being entertained with something. This addiction has now persisted over a year beyond my delivery, and I see it creeping between me and my toddler. All of a sudden, I'll realize that I was looking aimlessly at my phone instead of paying attention to her. Or I'll be with her, but I'll have this tick in the back of my mind begging for me to get my phone and scroll through social media. Definitely, phones can be a really, really wonderful thing, but I just urge you to be mindful of the habits that you form because it can be really easy to think you'll behave one way in the short term, but then realize how hard it is to get out of that cycle in the long term. My relationship with my baby is something I want to cherish and nurture, and I hate that something as meaningless and trivial as my phone is getting in the way of being truly present with her during this important season. Tip 14 is to understand that you will be preyed upon by the baby industry in so many ways, and you need to anticipate this and expect it when you're interacting with each part of the industry. Everybody will be trying to sell you something. Your baby registry website will be trying to get you to use their store, and they'll be trying to influence you to purchase things you've never even heard of or thought you needed from them. And they'll be telling you these are must have items for your registry, and your registry isn't complete if you don't have all these items on it. The toy industry will be telling you that you need all these toys, when in reality, your baby is going to prefer playing with your kitchen items and TV remote more than anything. The sleep help apps and websites are going to be trying to sell you their course that promises to make all your baby's sleep troubles go away, and you're going to potentially be charged hundreds for them to do it. The mom influencers you follow are going to be trying to sell you random items from their Amazon page so that they can get kickbacks. Every blog page giving you advice for anything for your baby is also going to sneak in some type of way they can profit from you. Suddenly, all your ads will be baby related if they aren't already during your pregnancy, and you'll just be drowning in baby item recommendations. And those are only the tip of the iceberg. I'm not trying to keep anyone from getting their bag or shame anyone from trying to make a living helping parents. People and creators deserve to be appropriately paid for their services, and a lot of them offer really amazing and helpful things. But you're going to be in one of the most easily taken advantage positions in your life, especially when it comes to sleep if that's a struggle for your baby. You'll be sleep deprived, sometimes desperate to figure out how to help your baby, and going through brain fog in the days following your delivery. You're not really going to be in a position to critically think about what you're spending money on, and it's okay to take advantage of these services and items and spend your money however best suits you. And a lot of these things really will be worth it to you. But I think it's only fair for you to be warned how truly vulnerable you will be and how the industry is. And that was the last tip. I definitely hope that you found these tips helpful, and there are obviously so many things to prepare for pregnancy, labor, and postpartum, so this is certainly not the end all be all, it's just the tip of the iceberg. But these are things I really didn't hear anyone else telling me that I wish that I knew before getting pregnant and definitely before labor. So I hope that they help you in whatever stage of the process that you find yourself in. And if you did find them helpful, please share them. And if you made it this far in, thank you for watching.